grew up on Long Island. I grew up on Long Island, and I always was sort of an atheist, but also sort of agnostic. I kind of don't really remember at this point. I know I didn't really believe in God, but I also never put enough thought into it to actually make a definitive decision on if I didn't believe in God. So I kind of always jumbled back and forth of like, maybe, yeah, maybe not, I don't really know, and kind of never thought about it. I went to a religion class when I was younger. My parents put me in that. It was a Catholic religion class, but it was kind of like a fake one, where it was one of my friends at the time, his parents were running it, or I guess his mom was running it, and then another kid in the group was also running it, and we would kind of like go to his house, eat like bagels or donuts or whatever in the morning before school once a week, read. I genuinely don't remember anything from it besides reading about like the burning bush. So like when you're like 8 and you have no idea what's going on or what you're learning about, and then you hear about like a burning bush, you don't really care that much. But I didn't like it just because of the fact that it like would take up time out of my morning once a week, and especially before school, that was like the sacred time. And so it kind of just pissed me off like going, because I didn't really get it. I didn't care to get it, and it kind of just felt like something that my parents were forcing me to do for some reason. Of course, I was 8. I have like no idea what's going on. I'm not sentient, or barely sentient, I guess. And so it did that. It did nothing stuck, obviously, because like I don't even remember if we talked about the Gospels or anything like that. But it seems, looking back, that seems really strange. I don't understand how or why, unless I'm just misremembering, which is very possible. And so yeah, I kind of just grew up not believing and not caring. Didn't think much of like anything. I had kind of no idea where I was going or doing. And then I think when I was around 10 or 11, started going to, when I was around 10 or 11, I always struggled to communicate with my parents and communicate with anyone in general. I'm really bad at it, and that was quite the accent there. I'm really bad at it in terms of communicating how I'm feeling. That's always, and still is, a massive weak point in my character, but because of that, communicating with my parents kind of just never happened. And it's a similar story for my brother, but I won't obviously, we both struggled with communication, where my mom was always there, but like it just kind of felt like impossible to talk to both my dad and my mom, not like through fault on both sides, essentially, meaning mine and theirs, not just them. And so kind of whenever I would have struggles or issues, I didn't really have anyone to fall back to or to talk to about them. So I would just kind of just sit with it and let it stew and devolve into chaos, basically. And when I was around 10 or 11, my mom actually stuck us in a martial arts school that was like a couple minutes from our house. And little did they know that would turn into a massive part of our life. But it was probably, like the next 10 years, and still I still know like those people and talk to them. I'm actually gonna play a game with one of them in literally 45 minutes. And that group from the martial arts school kind of became a second home for me and my brother, because we were both bad at communicating. We didn't have friends, or at least I didn't have friends growing up. And this was the first place where I kind of didn't feel like an outcast, because we were all basically like the outcasts, like that didn't have friends, like classic. And and yeah, we kind of just became friends with this, I think probably around 10 people, including the instructor, who was like a young guy at the time, and he kind of became a mentor figure / father figure to kind of the entire group. And we did like a ton of, basically all my youth shenanigans basically happened with or around that group. And yeah, it was great. But through that, in the middle of that, when I was around like 11 or 12, my parents ended up getting divorced, and that group was, I never talked about it with them, but I talked about it with the mentor figure, but not with my friends in that group. But it was like a rock for me, and I think for my brother too, because it remained in the time of uncertainty of my parents' divorce. That was always like, yeah, we're going to martial arts, we're going to hang out, have a good time, and just kind of blow off some steam with the boys. And yeah, I don't know if I would have been able to get through that time if it weren't for that. That was a massive help. And it was during that time when my depression and anxiety basically skyrocketed. I don't usually talk about it ever at this point, but like I suffer from a pretty severe bout with depression and severe anxiety that I was on meds for years. Basically, from the divorce onward. So yeah, I'm 20 now, so however many years that is. And because of that, my mom, because she was struggling to talk to me also, in terms of she just couldn't really get much out of me, but she knew I should talk to someone, and so she contacted and talked to the martial arts guy, the owner, and basically asked him to talk to me and see how I'm doing. Because basically it was every morning before school I was having severe panic attacks, but obviously couldn't understand that at the time. So I was just freaking out basically every morning and every night before school and stuff like that. Every Sunday night, basically every day, just freaking out. Borderline not a functioning human being. Just could not, just breaking down in tears, everything basically. And this instructor sat me down after class one day. He had a box of pizza. He was like, "Yeah, man, what's going on? Let's talk." I was like, "All right." And my mom basically took my brother out and I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever, cool. Yeah, let's talk." And that, me and him always joked that was the start of our real relationship. Because it sparked a lot of things where we realized that we had common interests at the time, and he started to actually kind of crack my shell open a bit, and try to become more of a person. It's crazy that it's 10 years ago now. Oh my god. Time is flying. But anyways, the fast forward a few years, through this group, every now and then, we would kind of just make fun, make jokes about faith in mainly in religion, in terms of making fun of Christianity, the Bible, Muhammad, and the Quran, stuff like that. We made fun of that, even though we didn't look into it at all. We had zero idea what we're talking about, which seems, I guess, that's a common thing no idea what I'm talking about, but making grandiose, massive claims as if I have every idea of what I'm talking about. And basically just having like fundamental misunderstandings of what's in the Bible, what's taught in the Bible, what church actually is, basically everything. We had it wrong. And I didn't think anything of it, basically. I was like, yeah, it's whatever. And kind of, I stuck with my original point of view of like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, but never really thought much of it. And it wasn't until my dad started dating another woman right after the divorce, and they eventually moved in together. She moved into my dad's house, which was a pretty big change, and she has 2 kids, Phoenix and Gage. And Phoenix is like a mega god man. Guy is still is my like the spiritual goal, where he just, yeah, I feel like he just embodies the book so well. But yeah, anyway, and then his brother Gage was also a pretty big Christian. And they're both basically around like the same age. Like, they're a little bit older than me. And Phoenix was away at college. Sorry, I got text. Phoenix was away at college, and Gage, I think, was also away at college at the time. Yeah, he was in Arizona at ASU. But eventually, after college, he moved back in, and so me and my brother got to kind of have more talks with him, both of them, through like sporadically through time, about Christianity. We were like, me and my brother both took the same stance of like, we just don't get it. I don't understand. How do you believe it? What even is it, I guess, also, and why do you think that makes sense? And at the time, the questions that I was asking, which again, I I didn't think that they were disrespectful at the time, and also I was also asking the wrong questions, which is interesting to look back on now, where I was basically doing the classic of straw manning a ridiculous question to see, almost trying to poke holes in the system of how the forgiveness of Christ actually works. The classic, could Hitler go to heaven? Or can Osama bin Laden go to heaven? And stuff like that. And I thought those were killer at the time. And it kind of it was fascinating conversations, and I'm so grateful that they actually went along with it, and actually engage and try to help kind of foster understanding, because it was from me and my brother on one far end of the spectrum, and then he and his brother on the other side, and it was so interesting to kind of have that come together. And throughout those conversations, my mind sort of started shifting as I learned a little bit more about it. I still did not believe it. I thought it was complete nonsense, and didn't read anything in the Bible, didn't actually understand the fundamentals of it, but I was sort of starting to understand why people would believe it. And I was taking up the classic no, it's good for them kind of position on it. But then more and more, when I would hear jokes be told about it, they would be reframed in my mind to where they weren't funny anymore. They were just nonsensical, or one person from the martial arts crew that's younger than me, that she would come to me for advice sometimes, and sometimes the idea of God would come up, and she would be she would almost try and curb herself and be oh no, of course I don't believe God, God doesn't exist, of course I don't believe that, as if it was a taboo to believe in that. And that always rubbed me the wrong way, where started thinking like, oh, maybe this group isn't all good, which of course, like, no group is all good to an extent, because we're humans, like, we're all sinners. And so that was like one of the first times I noticed, I at least attribute to like a crack in like my atheist agnostic armor, where it just kind of didn't sit right anymore, like making fun of it, especially like when I started to understand that I understood nothing. So I was like, oh, like I shouldn't be talking about this, and this is also like weird that people like have like this strange frame of view of it. And my mentor figure, the martial arts guy, is super into like the more new age spirituality. He doesn't believe in Christianity or anything like that, but he attributes everything to like the universe, stuff like that. And so hearing that a lot, of course, influences you. But then I started to I think it was Phoenix that said it, and then me and my brother have been thinking about it a lot in terms of like looking at the fruit that people bear. And I sort of started to look around at the people around my life and that I let influence and dictate my life. And I realized that the people that I put the most stock in were bearing the least amount of fruit in categories that I feel like are just fundamentally the most important. And of course, it's not saying like if you follow Jesus, like your life's gonna be great. Yeah, that's prosperity gospel. That's nonsense. Like, again, the disciples almost all got brutally killed for this, and so many people have throughout history. But like, it's more just like seeing like the peace that Jesus can give is more what I mean, and that a lot of the times people that actually live out what the Bible is saying, their lives tend to be better, is more what I'm saying. But yeah, and then the next big moment was Phoenix's wedding, actually, where me and my brother were groomsmen, and we basically were hanging out in the woods in Texas for basically like a week, and we were the only ones that weren't Christians, and so we were kind of fish out of water big time, but we took it, we were like, this is actually interesting, talk to more people about it, hear more perspectives on it, and kind of see what this whole thing is actually about again. We go, meet all these people, everyone's insanely nice, it's great, and on one of the long drives, one guy, Jeff, beast, what a cool guy. I think he actually started a church in Colorado, or at least that was his plan. I don't know what he's up to now, and me and my brother were in the back of his truck while he was driving, and Gage was in the passenger seat, and we had like a 2 or 3 hour drive, I think, ahead of us, and so Gage was like, Jeff, go, give me some God's real, come on, like, and so we just started talking basically about it, and he went more like in depth on Jesus, like, in the Gospels, which again I fundamentally just didn't understand at the time, like what the basis of what they even were. Like, I didn't realize that they were like historical accounts of stuff, and eventually after hours of talking, he was like, all right, so like, we're gonna try something. It's gonna be a little weird, but just like go along with it, right? And we're like, yeah, sure, I guess I know. And he was like, ask God in your head, what does he think of you? And me and my brother were immediately like, oh, this is some crackpot stuff. But we were like, what, fine. We got nothing better to do. Let's see. Let's try it. And we asked the question. We sat in silence for around 30 seconds, and I heard the words, you're on the path. Or I heard them, but more like they stuck out to me in my head. Like, I'm not saying I heard like the voice of God, more like they stuck out in my head. Which, that exact terminal of path, the path was always like my entire life. that exact terminology was a massive fear of mine and a massive sticking point in my head that me and my mentor have had probably hundreds to thousands of like hour-long conversations about my fear about not being on the path and basically being in like paralysis, like not really understanding what to do and stuff like that. And so I heard that and felt like a wave of like peace, and I was like, you what? Okay. I look over, my brother, he didn't have any like words stick out to him, but he felt a wash of love over him. And that was what I attribute to as the second big crack in our atheist agnostic armor, where we were like, that was pretty weird. But of course, that didn't do it, because you always need more, right? And so we were like, oh, that's crazy. Just gonna keep going though, and didn't really think much of it. Kind of just like immediately tried to figure, oh, that's interesting. Who knows? Could have been anything though. And then fast forward a couple days, the night before the wedding, Phoenix had an acoustic guitar and was singing to all the groomsmen and all the bridesmaids. So it was probably like 30 of us in a big room, and he was singing worship songs. And me and my brother, again, being the only two non-Christians, were so out of where we were. It was bordering on almost like uncomfortable, but more because like I never felt anything. I've never felt remotely as like passionate about something as watching these people sing along to Phoenix. Like I've never seen that, and I've also never felt it. So it was a strange feel, like watching these people like break down in tears. They sing like and worship Jesus. Like I didn't understand it, and it was like it was really powerful. I never actually told anyone that. That at least for me, it was really powerful. Just like seeing the pure like emotion and love. Yeah, I could still like vividly see it. Then the day happened, the wedding, and Phoenix gave almost like a sermon before it was actually time for like the ceremony, and it was amazing. It was like the most picturesque location on like a lake, and even my dad like started to tear up, and that clicked for something in him too. And basically Phoenix just like asked people to just like accept Jesus, and it was a pretty big moment. That was another like kind of crack. And then like, and also seeing how everyone interacted. Like I was always told about like the evil crazy Christians that like were basically just like telling you to like not do fun stuff and stuff like that, but these were like the nicest, kindest, like most loving and warm, embracing people ever. So like again, another crack where we're like, interesting. Okay, so this is like really not what we thought, like at all. So kind of like we came home. Dylan all throughout, but now mainly starts doing a deep dive into the historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. Which again, me and my brother, we just expected that there would be zero for it, and it was just like pure faith. How does like not more people talk about that there's a lot of evidence, which is it's amazing. But he does that, eventually comes across a famous book and movie by Lee Strobel, The Case for Christ, and he's like, Trey, I'm telling you, you should watch this movie. It's a good movie, on top of the fact that it also like succinctly displays the case for Christ. I was like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. Kind of like, I still didn't think much of it. What a joke. And time goes by, and then eventually one day, my brother's like, dude, I think I'm starting to believe it. And I was like, you what? As if I've been like betrayed. He was like, yeah, dude, like looking at the evidence and all this for it, and like it kind of seems likely that at the very least it seems likely that it could be true. And I was like, oh, this guy's insane. And and so there were a good few weeks there and there was even a moment where he was like, yeah, like I never like will like spread like the gospel, but like, yeah, I think it might be true on the DL. And then literally a couple nights later, me, him, and Gage were talking, and he realized that he was spreading the word to me. And in that moment, he was like, oh my, I'm doing it. Oh my God. And it was like a massive moment where we basically all laughed. We were like, yeah, dude, you're spreading the word. And I still didn't believe it. And I just thought, I was like, dang, dude, like my brother that I've been so close with and I've seen eye to eye on with everything, gone through everything together. I can't believe we're like splitting, diverging. Like I viewed it like as that massive of a thing of like, dang, this sucks. And we had like, he talked to me more and more, and I like kind of almost argued with him for probably like 2 to 4 weeks about everything, like where he was like giving me like C.S. Lewis arguments, Pascal's wager, all that stuff like that. And I was just like giving like the classic talking points that an atheist gives to respond. And then I slowly started to realize I was answering with those even though I didn't actually necessarily believe them. Like I was like so agnostic that like I didn't even believe my own arguments against Christianity. And once I started becoming more self-aware in that, and I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. Maybe I actually have to make a decision. What do I actually believe here? And I started reading Matthew, not as a believer, but more as like, let me actually read this, because everyone says read Matthew. And I'm like, all right, sure, why not? Because Phoenix sent us both study Bibles. So I cracked it open, started reading it, and I was like, oh, this is like a lot different than I thought. Besides, it was a brutal first chapter, guys. All just pure, just Gabadoo, son of Dadubadi, and stuff like that. But past that, it opened my eyes to see like, oh wait, this is interesting, because I've always been interested in history. So I was like, this is actually interesting. Continue reading, still didn't believe it, and then didn't get like terribly far, like a few chapters, kind of stopped for a little bit, but then I noticed I started to kind of like, without thinking about it, sort of pray, because I was like, maybe, because like my anxiety and depression was again like spiking up, like really bad, and I basically had the concept was like nowhere left to turn, and so I sort of started praying. I didn't really feel like much back, but I continued to do it. And then one day, I wish I did remember. I don't remember actually what even I was so upset about, but it was a really hard day. I come home, sit down in my chair. It was like sunset, so probably around like 5 at the time, p.m., or 6, and basically on the verge of tears. And I said out loud, Jesus Christ, I accept you as my Lord and Savior. And I get chills even now thinking about it. Just the wave of peace and love that washed over me, and it felt like my soul was like released from like an eternal pressure, basically, which in a way it was, but and it was instantly my first thought. I do remember that. My first thought was like, oh, it is real. And I basically like opened my eyes and I was like, oh jeez, oh, whoa. And I basically just sat there like stunned for a good couple minutes, just like kind of like sitting underneath the sun that came through my window, and I was like just kind of like embracing the warmth, and I was just in awe. basically. And my brother, I think, got home a couple minutes later, or just like came into my room a couple minutes later, and at first I actually kept it to myself in a weird way, where I was like, I'm just gonna let this sit for a second, and because I don't know, and somehow the conversation got brought up about God, and he started bringing up more like evidence-based stuff for the resurrection, and I was like, hey dude, I think I believe. And he's like, you what? And I was like, yeah dude, I think I like just converted. And it kind of started a whole conversation, and even through that, like at the end of the conversation, we were like, because we were both like still like nervously young in the faith, where it was still like a new like crazy thing. And at the end of that first conversation, he was like, dude, he was like, even like just talking about it, this feels like right, and it feels like good, almost like we were both like getting stuff off our chest in terms of like being outwardly expressive in our faith. And yeah, and it was I think it was the next day we were going to get lunch with our mom before she moved away, and we sat down with her at like a bowl restaurant, and we were like, yo, this Jesus guy is real. And after years of thinking we were smarter than everyone else and dunking on Christianity, including to our mom, she actually, we pulled her away from the faith over the years of like making fun of it and calling it nonsense, stuff like that. And so she was like, are you serious? After all that. We're like, yeah, sorry about that, very sorry. And we sent her a Bible, got her to start reading, and after she was attending a local church by her place in South Carolina, and yeah, like it has felt, I'm not sure where it is actually in the Bible, but the whole like, if you're saved, like your house will be saved kind of thing like that. And me and my brother have been talking about that more and more recently, where it does feel like that, where our mom came to it, our dad is still in the midst of coming to it, but I think we'll come to it. Like it's amazing to see just like Jesus working everywhere, basically. And yeah, and then after that, my brother came to Austin on a retreat that he got to come to for free through a crazy exchange of circumstances, and then came back and I was like, yeah, I'm moving to Austin. And I was like, what? How? Why? Because like we didn't really have a plan on how to move out ever. It was kind of just like, yeah, it'll eventually happen, but never really too much thought put into it. And he's like, it feels like God is pulling me there. I don't know why, but it does. And we both looked. He had around like, I think it was around like 5 to 10K in his bank account at the time. I had nothing. I was so broke that I had to pay my taxes, which were so low that I didn't actually owe any taxes that year. But I couldn't afford the fee that TurboTax charged me to do my taxes that equated to zero. Thanks TurboTax on that one. But so like I had nothing basically to my name. I had maybe like a month of car insurance left in the bank account, and that was it. And I was like, Dylan was like, do you want to come? And I was like, dude, I'd love to. That'd be cool. That'd be crazy. Moving from Long Island to Austin, Texas, at 19. That would be sick. But I don't have the money. And he was like, well, dude, but don't Grandma and Papa, don't they have a college account full like that has like 10K for you? And I was like, yeah, but like they're not gonna let me pull it out because like they basically, them and my dad wouldn't let me unless it actually was for college, which I did a year of like community college and then dropped out. And he was like, just ask Dad. I have a feeling, just ask Dad, even though I've asked my dad before and he always said no. So like the next day I asked him, I approached him, I was like, Dad, like I never went away to college. I know you don't want me to use that money on nonsense. Dylan is looking to move into Austin, and he invited me to go. Can I take out that money and use it as rent payment, as almost like a living the college experience, but in my own way? And by the grace of God, immediately he was like, yeah, you can do it. And somehow, even though I had literally $0 to my name, because of that, I had, after tax, like I think the check was around $6,000 that I had. And so we signed a lease a couple weeks later, and then probably a month or two after that, we were on a plane to Austin, and we had no jobs lined up, no friends, no connections, no anything. We saw pictures of the place, that was it. And we just signed the lease, and we're like, you know what? This feels right for some reason. It's a massive leap, but if it's in the chase for God, let's do it. And we did it. That's not to say that it wasn't brutal. With the night before, the lead up to leaving, and the first probably week or two here was excruciating. It was absolutely brutal. We had no one, we had no furniture or anything. Literally, the first night we were here, I cried in my bathroom for like an hour. Because it was the first time I left my home and everyone I know and love. And coming to this place where when we first got here, especially compared to Long Island, it's not exactly up there in nicety where we're at. Now we know it's not actually that bad. But we had zero furniture, zero anything. It was literally an empty apartment. And we lived around the corner from a pizza place. So we ordered a pie, came back, sat on the floor of this apartment, opened up my brother's laptop, and watched Rush Hour 1 while eating pizza in an empty apartment together. And that was our day one. It was the start of the hottest week of the summer. It was like 103 or 4 out. And crying, eating pizza on the floor while watching Rush Hour. With no plan or anything. A couple months rent. The math was each of our individual nuts are around $1,600 to $1,700 a month. So we were like, oh, we have a couple months max. And we've been applying to jobs since we signed the lease. So we were like hundreds of applications already in and heard nothing back. We were like, we're meant to be here. God will provide. Months go by, money dwindling. Dylan gets an interview for a help desk job at Whole Foods. Doesn't get it. And we're like, oh my God, we're screwed. And it was probably a few days or a week after that, he gets a call back saying, yeah, we actually just had to let someone go. Do you want the job? So by the grace of God, he didn't get the job. He flubbed the interview and then got the job anyway. Just in the nick of time where we needed it. And through his generosity, covered rent for a while, because I basically was dwindled back down to essentially zero on my account and had to literally rack up credit card debt in order to survive. But it's for God, so it doesn't matter. It's not my money. I don't mean because it's a credit card. I mean it's we're here for God, so it's God's money and God will provide. And I had quite a few angry prayer nights of just being confused, why? We're supposed to be, or at least it certainly seemed like it. Why can't I just get a job? Why am I not able to pay rent? And so we got here in August, and I just got the first job in February. So what is that, 6 or 7 months after I finally got a job, which again I think was also through God's grace, because I applied to that job in November, didn't hear back, It was November 11th was when I applied. I remember seeing the date. And out of the blue, I remember taking a shower one day, just being like, what is this? This is a scam. Oh my God. Maybe we're not supposed to be here, or I'm not supposed to be here. Maybe it was just my brother who's supposed to be here. Freaking out. And I get an email on my phone when I get out of the shower, and I see it's from the company. I'm like, why are you emailing me? What? I look, it's from one of the store managers, and I was like, I'd like to reach out for an interview. I found your interview in our pile, and I was like, yes, please. And basically I had an interview lined up, and before the interview date, my application was removed from the pile, meaning that like if the store manager looked at the application pile just a couple days later, I would not have been there. I go do the interview. I prayed a lot beforehand, and I really do think that the Holy Spirit just guided my tongue on that one, guided me through, and it was a couple days later, and I was standing out in the park that's like right next to our apartment, and staring out at the sun and being like, God, please, like, I don't know what to do if this doesn't work out. Then I get the call, and I got the job. And this is now my second week of non-training work. Oh, sorry, that's my magic toilet that just does that randomly. And yeah, and we're here now. It is, oh my God, it's March 11th. Tomorrow's Dylan's birthday. We're going out with Mason, our Bible study friend. We were gonna go to Rudy's, but Mason made a reservation for a different place. It's a surprise, so I'm curious where we're going. But he's gonna be 22. Dang. And yeah, and now because we're so far away from our family, we've met a lot of people here. By it made it obvious that okay, we actually are supposed to be here just through like the amount of things that has happened. But now we're toying with the idea of maybe we're supposed to be in South Carolina next, because like we're battling the logical side and following God's side in terms of it. We're not going to be here in Austin forever, and our family is away, and also time is like waning in terms of like our family being alive, and so we want to spend as much time with them as possible. And so now we're looking into moving to Charleston, possibly, when the lease is up. We don't really know yet. It's a big stress point right now. I'm sure it'll be figured out, because I know God has a plan, and plus time waits for no man. So like, when August does come, there will be a decision made. But yeah, now the rest still is up to God, just as the past was. And yeah, I guess that's somewhat abridged, but 44 minutes long. So not really abridged, but sort of abridged. Testimony. Yeah. Praise be to God.